You need to start going through the videos, going through the notes, and things like that. Yeah. So please let me know when are your exams so we can plan accordingly. That's very, very important. Yeah. Any question? I see someone raising their hand. I need to say something.
Hi, Isaac, can you hear me? Eh,
I heard you, but there's like kind of an echo when you're talking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, okay.
I was asking, like, because of this is the big data class, and after like our classes, we have to write an exam. Like, are we also going to write an exam for like cloud and also AI?
Yes, yes. So basically, okay, here's how this exam will help you, right? So you need to know there is an HCIA certification, which is internationally recognized. So I've spoken to some of the students who were wanting to get more information. So you need to understand that uh, what what we want, we don't just want you to be part of a competition and win a competition, whatever the prize is, win the money, get an opportunity to travel, and whatever you can get from the competition. But after that, you just have memory of winning the competition, but you don't have a certification. This is the reason why we wanted, because you're going to learn big data, AI, and computing and cloud computing. So that's why we wanted to this to be an opportunity for you to get these qualifications as well, right? So an HCIA certification in any of these fields is something that is very important, something that can help you in life. It can be part of your portfolio, part of your CV. So don't take it for granted. All right. Yeah. So you're going to write the three exams because you need to get this qualification. Uh, it means that you're taking your chances to be qualified in this field as well. All right. But when it comes to the competition, the, the competition, there will be three of the exams in one exam. So now what will happen is that last week we spoke about how the marks will be allocated to this field. So if you prepare for these exams, you will be ready for the competition. You see. So yeah. Um, I'm not sure if I answered your question or if there's anything else you wanted to know.
Thank you, sir. You answered my question.
All right. I see another hand. Is that Salma? Salma. I don't know if I'm saying it right.
Good to say. I just wanted to ask. I wasn't present for the last two sessions last week. I just wanted to ask when the exam is going to be for big data.
Yes, that's what I just said today. The example big data, because we will I think by next week Tuesday we should be done with big data. All right. So that's why I want you guys to send me a private message to tell me when is your school exam, so we don't clash. You see, so we can see how we can get a date for the exam. Uh, because what we wanted to do, the whole idea was to have the exam before we could, because the next thing we're going to do is AI. Before we can start with AI, we wanted to write an exam on big data. But if we see that it may clash with your school exam, then we're going to have to postpone the exam and start AI before we could even write the exam for big data. So the date of the exam will be decided by the class. So we're going to see how is your the plan or the program for your school, and then we're going to see how we're going to fit Does that make sense? Yeah. So we're basically going to depend on, so the class is going to decide when we're going to write it. Okay. Do you guys think having a week to prepare for the exam, is that enough, or you feel like you're going to forget, or what do you guys suggest? Any ideas?
A week will be fine. Will be okay, sir. Like I think we need a week to prepare.
No.
More like 2 weeks, because I think some of us have like some of us have like pending exams that are coming, and we are stressed about that. So at least
Yeah,
2 weeks would be enough.
yeah, no, it's fine. If we say 2 weeks, because the thing is, one issue that was raised is when we wait a long time, people end up forgetting, right? Uh, but even if we say 2 weeks, it means we're gonna continue with AI while we're preparing for big data exam. Because guys, the easier way you can make that for yourself is every day give it 30 minutes to go through this material. It's gonna be very easy. If you go through this material, you do a bit of research, you see that it's things that you can understand and it will be easy for you to remember. Uh, but if you wait until we say we give you a week to prepare for the exam, then you start preparing, it may be too much for you. You see, so better we continue going through it. You can start preparing because we should be done with big data by next week. So next week, the first session of the week, we should be done with big data. Okay. So and also uh, there is another question that I think someone sent me a message. I'm not sure if they're in the class where they have mentioned about having weekend classes like Saturday. Uh, instead of us having 1 hour on Tuesday, 1 hour on Wednesday, 1 hour on Thursday, we can have 3 hours on Saturday. So it's up to you guys. What you guys think about it? Is that a good idea to just have a Saturday 3 hours? So we say from 9 to 12 every Saturday we have our classes. Do you guys think that is going to be too much, or it's better to just have 1 hour a day? So it's up to you guys to communicate with me. All right. So I hope you guys can see my screen. Yeah. So can you guys see my screen? Or I move on?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Right. So today we're going to start with a different another package that also come with remember the HDFS is a framework, is a platform that we use to handle all the data that we're going to be using. And I think at the moment we started with AI, you guys are going to understand really what do we really do with this data? How do we really implement it into different technologies? All right. So now there is another package that comes with uh, Hadoop as well, which is another package that can help us handle data. Remember, we spoke about the HDFA, the Hadoop platform framework, has a framework that helps us handle data and everything. And that framework works together with other software. We spoke about Gatekeeper, or not Gatekeeper, Zookeeper um, last week. And we mentioned that Zookeeper will help us handle the data and all the operation by, especially when we're using different servers, many servers in different locations. So those servers can work together in order for us to handle our data. So today we're going to talk about the Hive distributed data warehouse. Okay, so what is Hive? So Hive will just be it's basically like a store, right? Picture it as a store. That's why we call it a warehouse. Picture it as a store where everything is structured, right? Everything is structured, and the advantage with Hive is that it's going to allow what we call SQL queries. So for anyone who have been exposed to coding, when you're dealing with things like databases, right? When you're dealing with things like databases, we usually in our code when we want to maybe do a certain operation. Let's say, for example, we want to we have, for example, a table, okay, a table of employees uh, with the salaries, for example. But we want to do a certain operation in our application, which will only be applied to employees with a salary of more than 50,000. So when you coding in what we call SQL, every database that you see, when we have that, so we do things like just wanna see if I can be able to write in this document. Right there. Mm, I'm trying to see how I can write there so you can see that. All right. So we basically, I don't know if you guys can see my screen here. Um, okay. So can you guys see? Can you guys see the whiteboard where it's written select from employees and yeah. So basically, if
It's
we have
blank on my
something,
side.
sorry, it's blank. Anyone else? Anyone can see
Yes,
anything?
sir.
Can you guys see, or it's blank everywhere?
I can see the screen.
So you can see the screen. Okay. So I'm just trying to use maybe a different page so I can just share the query. Um, Okay, so basically we have a table. Let's say we have employees there with different salaries, but we only want to do a certain operation with the employees that have a salary of that. So this is kind of a query that we can run in our database. But let me just share a different page so that we can just okay. So looking at this, this is an example of we have, for example, this database here where we have customer's name, the contact name that we use, the address, the city, the postal code, and the country. And now here, you can run a query where you say, for example, your program needs to select customers based on a certain information. Like here, what we did, we just select all the data from the database called customers. So these are the data we have about 91 records, right? So this is an example of what we call a query. Okay, so you look, for example, in our database, we have here, we have customers, we have categories, employees, and orders and everything. So here now what we we just wanted to display the list of customers. Then we can say select star from customers. So we can change it if we need to get the categories, for example. So we have select from categories. You see, these are the categories that we have. So this is what we call a SQL queries. It's a code that has access to certain data from our database. All right. Yeah. So now thinking about that. Guys, please make sure you mute your mic unless you ask any questions. Right. All right. So this is how we can access that. So now what I was saying is that guys, please make sure you mute your mic. Mute your mic. All right. So this is how you can actually deal with database, right? So now when we think about the eyes So the Hive warehouse will help you use this type of programming, type of queries, or type of code into the HDFS platform. All right. So that's what I will do. So if I, all right. So basically, remember we still dealing with software created by the company Apache. So the Apache Hive data warehouse software help you read, write, or manage large data sets in distributed storage by using SQL. SQL structure. So SQL, this is what we just spoke about now. This is the SQL structure. So by accessing the data through certain queries, we call them queries. So those are the codes that help you access. So those are queries. So that's what Hive does. Okay. So Hive overview. So you need to understand Hive is just a tool, which is part of the Hadoop framework, just like Zookeeper. Some features of Hive, it supports what we call flexible extraction, transformation, and load. It supports multiple computing engines such as Phase and Spark. So Phase and Spark are just some engines, some computing engines that we're going to talk about, and these are supported by Hive. Okay, so Hive will help you directly access all the files in your HDFS framework and HBase. We're going to talk about HBase after this. Okay, it's very easy to use and it's easy to program. Those are certain features. Okay, so some application scenario of Hive. Hive is used when we talk about data mining. Remember when we talk about certain social media such as WhatsApp, Facebook, and all of them, they are really involved. Their business model is data mining. They need to collect data, right? So, for example, today I couldn't access my Instagram because it was asking me to accept certain conditions for them to look at my activity and provide those data to other companies that may use those data for marketing. So when you look at that now, you can see these social media, these companies are involved in data mining. So when we talk about data mining, this is one of the application scenarios uh, where we can use I as a tool, right? So I can help us create certain queries, create certain methods to try and maybe in an application look at the user behavior. When your users are using your application, how they behave, how often do they use it? For example, you have an app which is mostly used in the evening. So you want to access a certain audience with certain products. So you can see that. So an example I can give you is when you look at the soccer game, right? If if you are uh, if you are a fan of soccer, if you are someone who understands soccer, during when there's a Champions League playing, everybody knows that on Tuesday and Wednesday in the evening there is going to be a game. So based on that analysis, we see that that is a time where most men will be watching TV. So if we want to make adverts, we want to advertise certain products that are only used by men, that will be the right time to advertise them on TV. Because at that time, when it's off time in a soccer game, there is a lot of men that are watching TV at the moment, at that time, and they're going to see that advert. So that's an example of how you can use certain data to try and push a certain product. So now when you talk about data mining, we can create certain algorithm using Hive that will be used in data mining. So this can be used in data mining. You use it, for example, for to study the user behavior. So for user behavior analysis, interest partition, area display, so that will depend, on how you can improve your app based on the data that you are collecting from the users. All right. I can also be used in non-real-time data analysis. So basically, this can be used when you have certain data. Let's say, for example, what example can I give you? So we look at certain data that are not really in real time. It's data that something may have happened. You don't need to really look at it in real time and analyze the data. So it's something that you can look at, for example, an history of a certain behavior of your users in the app. You look at the history. You say for the past 3 weeks, this is what the user of this app has been doing, right? And then from those data, you can analyze those data and see how you can improve that app or how you can improve that product. So if we look at a store, for example, we can see, okay, for the past 3 months, our customers, the customers of the store have been buying certain products. And then we can analyze those data independently. It's not really real-time data that we are analyzing. We're analyzing historical data. So that can be by looking at the log analysis. So log analysis, so basically we're looking at historical data. And then we have text analysis. So we can easily see, this is basically non-real-time data. And then we also have data summarization. Okay. So data summarization, so we can see on a daily basis how many people are clicking on certain buttons on the app and things like that, on a weekly basis, and then we can analyze that, analyzing, having a traffic statistic, seeing how many people, how many users are using the app, or if you, in the case of a store, how many people are entering the store at what time, and all those things. In a case we want to create maybe a smart traffic light, we can easily see at what time do we have more cars on the road and analyze those data and see the peak hours, what are the hours where the traffic light must change colors faster or slow. Okay. Okay. And then we have data warehouse. This is one of the scenarios where Hive can be used, where we're trying to extract data, load data, and transform data. Okay. Right. So comparing Hive to traditional warehouse, so other ways that we can do. So in terms of the storage, Hive will be using the HDFS system framework to store the data, while conventional data warehouse will just use different clusters, to store the data. In terms of execution engine, Hive will be using Tails. Usage method, we use HQL, which is the same as SQL, as I've mentioned, the SQL queries. Okay, so in terms of the flexibility of Hive, remember we spoke about the metadata. So the metadata storage is independent of data storage. Obviously, because we're using HDFS. Remember, in HDFS we said we have which part of HDFS saves the metadata? Anyone? Can anyone remind us? Which part of the HDFS architecture saves the metadata? Anyone remember? Sorry? Anyone remember which part of your HDFS architecture will store the metadata?
It's a name node. Name node.
Yeah, that's perfect. So the name node will save the metadata. Okay. So, and then we have different features, as you can see here, which you can read through. Most important thing is as well is in terms of the price. Sometimes some of these other type of warehouse are really expensive. But when you look at an example of Hive, so Hive is an open source product, so it's free to use, right? So it's something that is free. Okay, so some of the advantages again of Hive, we talk about the high reliability and fault tolerance. Um, we have the SQL-like, so basically the syntax looks like SQL, so they are easy to use. So you can create many functions. So when we talk about a function, is we create certain part of the code that will do a certain action. So you can create multiple functions. In terms of scalability, no matter how big, because remember, we're talking about big data, so we're dealing with large amounts of data. So using Hive, we can manage our storage. So the user is able to manage storage. Okay. And then when we talk about multiple APIs, that means you can get external software that you can implement, getting some code that will do certain actions, which you can implement in Hive as well. Okay, so Hive functions and architecture. So this is the architecture. So these are some APIs, as we said. You have an interface, you have a server, and then you have different drivers that we call compilers. You have optimizers and executors. Okay, and then you have these are what we call the engine: Tase, map, reduce, and spark. Okay, so this is how the running process works. So the client, remember last week we spoke about what is the client. So the client will be the user of the system. So the part of the framework where the user is clicking and doing whatever they want to do. All right. So basically how the process works is that the client will submit an HQL. So an HQL is basically a query, which is like the SQL that I've shown you today. In the example I gave you, say select from that table in the database called customers, select from employees, the example I gave you. So now that SQL like statement in Hive is called HQL. So whenever you see HQL, they talk about an HQL, you must just understand that is just a statement to represent how a query is represented in Hive. So it's the same as SQL. But when you're using the Hive platform, we call it HQL. So the command that will be submitted by the client, that will be the first step. And then remember the engine that is executing that query will be the Tase. So the Tase execute the query. So in the example that I gave you, we select from a table called customers. We want to display all the customers that we have. So an example can be you are creating a system in a restaurant where everyone that spends more than 20,000, you want to give them maybe a discount or give them a free bottle of wine, for example. Then you want the system to detect that automatically. Then your query will be maybe uh, select from clients, and then it gives you the list of the clients, and then you have different conditions in your code. If bill more than 50,000, and then reward the client, whatever you would do with your system, So now when you look at this, how do we access the data in the database based on how people are spending? So when people are spending, maybe the information goes into the database, and immediately your system, you have a query that say select from the table, and if this condition and if this and this list, whatever you have planned for the customer. So now this query will be submitted by the client, which is the user of the system I, right? And then the tail, which is the part of the whole architecture of Hive, which will execute this query, this SQL statement. It's gonna be executed by tail, right? And then you have the other part of the system, which is called yarn, which will allocate the resources to different application classes and authorize Hive in the yarn queue, right? And then we have I will update the data in the HDFS, right? Based on the data type, based on whatever data we're dealing with, okay? And then I will return the query result to the GDBC connection. So that's how it works. So we have Taze, which is a default engine using Hive, and then the Yarn will allocate the resources to the application, and then everything will return the feedback to HDFS. All right, so in terms of storage in Hive, we have a database where we store all the data, and in the database we have tables. So when you look, just like in other platforms, you can have a database. Your database can be called student. You have student database, but in the student database, you now have tables. So those tables, for example, you have tables called mathematics, which will have information about the mathematics. And then you have a table maybe that talk about physics. So that table will have information about the class called physics, right? So an example can be in this code, we have a database called CloudTrack, which is this competition. But in our database, we have different tables. So we have a table called Big Data, which will have all the students' names and their marks in Big Data and everything, every information about Big Data. And then you have another table, AI, another table, cloud computing. All right. So this is how a database can be created. So we have a database and then with tables, right? And then in the tables, we're going to have what we call buckets, partition, you know, and a partition can have buckets, you know, and then we have normal data, queue data, we have different types of data. So when we talk about the partition, what is the partition? So data table can be partitioned based on certain values. So based on the values that we have, we can create certain fields for those tables. Okay, so each partition will be like a folder. It's going to be a directory, and then the number of partition is not fixed. It will depend on the type of scenario you're working on. It will depend on what information you have in your database. Then you can create a partition. Just like when you are on an Excel, you're creating an Excel document. In the Excel document, you can have maybe a certain column which is under another column. So within, you can say maybe you have one partition which you call, let's say you call it, what you call it, mathematics. Mathematics can be a partition, but inside mathematics you have maybe test 1, test 2, test 3. So those are buckets that can be part of the mathematics partition. Okay, so now in terms of Hive, when we're dealing with partition and data and buckets, here a partition will be like a folder. It's a directory, right? It's a directory where we have all the buckets. And remember, inside a partition, we can have buckets and buckets can be created inside the buckets are created inside the partition. So you need to understand now we have different buckets. So now the bucket will be like the file. So a certain file which has certain information is inside in a folder. Remember, you have folders, you have files. So when we talk about files, it's going to be a bucket, and when we talk about folder, it's going to be a partition. Okay. So the numbers of buckets is specified when creating a table. So when you're creating a table, you have to specify the numbers of buckets. Okay. All right. Any question on this? Any question on this? Okay. Okay. So this is how you're going to manage table and external table, right? So Hive can create managed table. So table that you can manage, edit, change as you want, and we can also have external tables. So basically, by default, when you're creating a table, right, in Hive, it creates what we call a managed table, right? And all the data that you're going to add there will be stored in a certain directory. Okay. So, but now when you create an external table, so I can be able to access that external table, able to access those data in that external table. Um, but if normally you do not have to get information from a different table or from a different software or from a different source, everything you just want to use it on the same place, it's better to use managed tables. Okay. But if you want to use Hive and at the same time use other tools as well, when you're dealing with the same data set, you want to take certain data from a different server and different services, so you want to do that, then you can use external tables. Okay. So what you need to understand when you want to create or you want to load, what means you want to read or load the data from a table. When you're dealing with a managed table, the data are moved to the repository directory. And if you're dealing with external table, the data location is moved, right? If you want to create or load data. But if you want to drop the data, or delete the data, when you talk about dropping the data, it means you are deleting the data. If you want to do that, if you are using a managed table, you need to note that the metadata and the data are deleted together. So when you remove a data, the metadata and everything is removed. Okay. But if you were using an external data, remember now, this is an external table. So you have a certain limited access to that table. So when you go and use the drop function in Hive, what's going to happen is that it's not going to delete the data itself. It's just going to delete the metadata. So on your side, on I side, you just going to delete the metadata, but the data itself is not removed. Okay. So these are certain functions that you can use in I. Certain functions are built in. Let's say you are doing a mathematical operation. You're dealing with some numbers that you want everything to be rounded, maybe to the nearest 5 or anything like that. So you can use round, right? Round, there's other options, flow, you're looking for the absolute value at, let's say all your answers. Because remember, in your calculation, you want to make sure that you're not getting a negative value. For example, you're dealing with people's weight. No one can have a weight which is minus something. So you want to get the absolute value, which would be the positive value. Okay. And then in terms of these mathematical functions, you have date function. If you're dealing with date, you have things like date, or you want to show just the month or the day, things like that. All right. For example, if you're dealing with a certain software, but you don't want your client to use it over the weekend, so you can specify the day, you know. So these are certain functions that you use. So maybe in your program it says if the day equals Saturday or Sunday, you know, then the system must not work or the system mustn't do certain things. All right. Okay. So these are what we call string functions. Is when you're dealing with words, where you can trim a word, you can determine the length of a word, you know, things like that. Okay. Okay, and then these are built-in functions. So these functions are functions that come with the program. But you can create your own function. You can create your own functions. You can create your own code and say this is what you want the program to do. So this will be called user-defined function. So you need to understand in the exam they can ask you questions like true or false. Hive in Hive you can have built-in function or user-defined function, right? These are some questions that you can get, right? So tomorrow we're going to start with the basic Hive operation. These are just some operation that you use. No need to memorize this. It's just to show you when we're doing it practically, you're gonna see these are certain operations that you do in terms of using Hive. Okay. Okay, so uh, that's what we're gonna start with tomorrow, the ISQL overview. All right, guys. Any question or comment or anything? I hope everyone is registered on the system. I hope everyone is registered, guys, because by now you should be registered and having access to the material. Any question? Any comment? Any question? Any comment? Is everyone still okay? Anyone so challenged by the registration? Okay, so I should assume everyone is registered. So everyone is registered. Guys, why is everyone so quiet? Is everyone registered? Can you guys hear me? Is everyone registered?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
When
All
you
right.
say registered, what do you mean? Do you mean like to access the material, or is there another?
Yeah. Yes. To on the Huawei calendar,
To access
can
the
everyone? Yes. Can everyone access the material?
yes, we can access the videos and
Okay. That's good. All right, guys. I'm just gonna take the class screenshot, and then from there we can call it a day. I think those who can turn on the cameras